philosophy matters.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Jack here. I am super excited today because we have a guest who is very special to me, a true liberty warrior, someone who I have known about and have gotten closer to over years. He is an amazing guy. But before we talk about him just really quick, I just want to remind everybody that the Voluntarist Origins 6 and Trade Payback campaign is getting to its final days. There's only 9 days left. We've actually just crossed the second stretch goal. And with that stretch goal, we just unlocked a new special perk for backers. So people who have the print comic or higher tier, they're not only getting a sticker, they're going to be getting an art print, they're going to be getting a bonus game card. So there's a lot of cool stuff already. So definitely check it out over on Indiegogo. Just type in Voluntarist. You can find it there. It's very easy to find. And this is our 10th year anniversary edition. So it's pretty cool. It's going to be a whole lot of fun. And it's definitely something you're going to want to be on when we have all these extra perks and bonuses coming through. So make sure to check that out. All right. Now, without further ado, let me introduce our guest here. It is Jason Bassler. He is the co-founder of the Free Thought Project, which is sadly one of the most attacked projects by the mainstream. And he has been featured in such publications as the Rolling Stone, Reason, InfoWars, Russia Today, Mike, Tom Wood Show, and many others. I definitely know that. I've seen that over the years. He's also founder of Police the Police. He was called one of the most extensive recorders of law enforcement misbehavior in America by Rolling Stone magazine, in fact, and his organization continues to grow and grow. So welcome, Jason. How are you doing?
Thanks, dude. I'm doing well. Thank you for the kind words. Love the enthusiasm. And thank you for having me on your show.
Oh, of course. It's my pleasure. I mean, I've been following along with your work since, the early days. So for me, I've always just been aware of what you're doing and the ways you really break in the culture. So could you just give a little bit of a background here about how you came to really appreciate the principles of liberty and your work for those who may be new to you or haven't heard about your work before?
Sure, absolutely. I'd love to. Well, I mean, it's a very short story. There's 2 words, Ron Paul, like yourself. Oh, by the way, before I get started, apologize for this goofy looking headset. Apparently my damn mic is broken. I spent a half an hour trying to get it set up before this. But so yeah, you might hear some extra or wind or blown. yeah, exactly. But yeah, so I guess I grew up in the Bay Area. I was always interested in activism. I feel like I have activism in my blood. Back in the day, the Bay Area was a little bit more counterculture. These days, obviously, it's more lefty, liberal, off the rails. So around 2011, I was in the music industry. I just got done with audio engineering school, actually, in Hollywood, Los Angeles, California. And I started seeing this Occupy Wall Street protest everywhere. And I was like, what is this all about? I need to kind of learn about what's going on here. I need to get involved. I felt like this immediate desire to somehow get involved. I saw a lot of my peers. I saw people who were angry with the system. I just couldn't quite place my finger on exactly what it was that they were upset about. So it didn't take long to kind of realize that in the age of information, ignorance is a choice. So I had the choice. I had the internet right there in front of me. Was I going to just continue being a normie, a low effort thinker, or was I going to take that choice to educate myself through the internet? And let me remind you, during that time, the internet was kind of the Wild West and what I like to call the golden age. So things were a lot different back then. There was a lot more information that was easily accessible. There wasn't as much censorship. And so I basically just went to town. I started educating myself on all these topics, absorbing as much information as I could. And around that same time, I found Ron Paul. And it was right before his election, the 2012 election. So there was a lot of fervor, a lot of people very interested in Ron Paul. So I just did myself the favor of researching him and finding out and trying to find out exactly what he stood for, what his beliefs were, what he was campaigning on. And let alone, it didn't take long. It was maybe about a month or so of, trying to understand who this guy was, that I realized, wait a second, like I'm actually supporting a politician here. I've never supported a politician before in my life. They never made sense to me. And all of a sudden this guy's speaking my language. So yeah, I guess the old joke goes, what's the difference between a libertarian and an anarchist? About 6 months. And I know it's a little cliche at this point, but that was me. It basically took about 6 months of really kind of connecting the dots, taking my philosophical understandings to their fullest extent to really understand that, hey, I don't believe in the initiation of aggression. I believe in self-ownership. So I think I'm an anarchist. Is that crazy? And from then on, I just started to kind of roll with it. Somewhere around that time, 2012, I had started Police the Police. About a year later, me and Matt Agarist, the co-founder, editor-in-chief of the Free Thought Project, started the Free Thought Project in 2013. So yeah, it's been quite the journey since then. I don't know how much you want to get into the weeds there as far as the Free Thought Project and the rocky road that we've been on. But yeah, it's been an awesome journey nonetheless, even though there's been some difficulties with censorship. Got to meet a lot of awesome people, do a lot of good work. So
Awesome. And then besides Ron Paul being a big, kind of inspiration for you, what are two other people who have really challenged you and helped you grow along the way in that space?
Sure. I would say Tom Woods, shout out Tom Woods. Absolutely is still one of my favorites to this day. I feel like he's one of the greatest resources we have in the Liberty community. He's scholarly, he's intellectual, he's a straight shooter. And I'd say probably the other one would be Mark Passio, believe it or not. Not sure if you're familiar with Mark Passio, but in the very beginning stages of, quote, waking up, he really taught me a lot about natural law. His podcasts were a great foundation to begin my liberty journey. And that was, probably one of the most influential, although I must say I've maybe slowed down a little bit on some of his work. Not to say it's bad or anything. He went a little bit more esoteric, I guess you could say, with some of his work, and it just wasn't resonating as much as some of the earlier stuff. But I still fully support and appreciate what he's doing. It doesn't, it's not quite my thing these days. But yeah, those are probably the two, besides Ron Paul, that were really, instrumental in creating my own Liberty Foundation.
So when you started your own, kind of more focused activism work, what type of vision did you have for yourself in terms of what were you thinking your ultimate goal was going to be if you had, success along the way?
Sure. Well, yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, Jack. In the very beginning, I didn't really know what to do with myself. I know we share this in common. That you want to do something. You're so eager to get out there and share the information. You want to get activated. So the first few things I did was just going to protests. I was also doing Ron Paul banner hangs and tried to get involved with the Ron Paul campaign as much as I could. There was a group in Hollywood at the time, We Are Change Hollywood, that organized a bunch of that stuff. But I was out there on the street one day and, I had my big sign. I can't remember what it was. It was probably a Ron Paul sign or something. But I realized, like, hey, this is fun and I feel like I'm doing something, but I really wonder, like, how many people am I actually reaching on the side of the road here? And Hollywood's a busy place. And we were right next to the freeway, but it kind of dawned on me that this work is probably going to be much more powerful and influential online. And that way, instead of just having one, sign that has one motto or slogan, I could actually give more context. I could actually give more detail. I could actually give the information that people need to plant seeds of interest in their mind so they could grow the tree of knowledge, as I like to say. So it was probably around that time where I realized that I wanted to do more internet activism, which, I don't know, I guess in 2012, it really wasn't as popular, especially as it is now. But it didn't feel like I was really making much progress. And maybe just because, the way social media is set up these days, you actually get to see how many people like your posts, how many people like your page or whatever. That was maybe more of an indicator to me that I was moving in the right direction or doing something of value, of substance. But I just couldn't continue to put myself in the position where I was going out to these protests and feeling like I was really making a difference. And don't get me wrong, I'll still go to a protest here and there. And I do understand the value in them. There's a visual representation of people who share the same, mentality or idea as you do when you go to protests. And I think that it can be very powerful, but I also think there's a lot of more of like a deeper work here as far as just waking people up, of course, the culture wars and everything that entails. So I think I made the right choice, although, as I mentioned, a couple minutes ago, it's certainly been challenging with all the censorship. And there was a good period of time there, though, between, 2012 and 2015, 2016, where we had a ton of reach. We were reaching a lot of people. We actually felt like we were being successful doing the online activism. And so Yeah, I mean, I guess that was maybe when I had realized that this was the path for me. And as far as the end goal, I don't know if I ever saw an end goal. In fact, I might have already peaked. I might have already hit it. And I hate to say that, I'm not trying to talk down on myself about myself, but there was a few years there with the Free Thought Project that we were reaching millions and millions of people every week. I mean, I have the screenshots, upwards of 50, 60, 70 million people every week, bringing in 40,000 new fans. So I feel like we did the work and we did a good job of getting people interested in this type of counterintuitive information and liberty-based information, and maybe giving them enough information to motivate them to really do their own work, to do their own research. And maybe, who knows, maybe I even turned on a few people to being libertarian anarchists. I hope so.
Yeah, it's a tough thing sometimes to know, because I mean, having talked to many different people and their journeys and asking what influenced them, sometimes you don't even know your impact, because your impact was one, kind of brick along with several other bricks, but
Sure.
It was an instrumental brick. You know what I mean? It's not like, oh, that's no big deal. It's like, no, what you did was very important in conjunction with other people. And sometimes it's hard to figure out where that, fits in, unless someone decides to really openly say, yeah, the Free Thought Project, that article, man, that really, really changed my mind. Unless they go out and actually speak about it, it can be hard to know that
Sure.
impact. But
Yeah.
with that in mind, what would you say in your work was the single most influential, piece that you made or you did? It could be, anything, but just what's the one thing that really stood out to you in your work that you're proud of over the years in terms of your reach?
Sure. So there's a gentleman of the name of Roderick Talley in Little Rock, Arkansas. And a lot of the work we do is not just government accountability, but it's also police accountability. So as I mentioned, we have Police the Police. This gentleman had reached out to us after being denied by his local news outlets. He basically had a no-knock raid placed on his home, but this one was a little bit different. This one, they actually used explosives to blow the door off the hinges. So he had, luckily for Roderick, and I don't know how he had the vision or mindset to actually be smart enough to record this, but he actually had a surveillance camera inside of his home. So when you watch the video, you're watching Roderick literally laying down, sleeping on his couch. And next thing you know, there's this huge explosion. The door literally flies across the room, and about 10 armed goons come in, fully intact gear and everything. And of course, they're law enforcement officers. Roderick's dog was scared shitless. It took off. So Roderick didn't have much support or help or momentum, and he reached out to us at the Free Thought Project. And I believe we covered his story at least twice, 2 different articles. And shortly thereafter, it got picked up by a number of different national outlets, including Bradley Balco over at the Washington Post. And it became a national story. So that's probably just one example of getting somebody some attention. He ended up having a lawsuit that he won. I think he's even running for mayor now of his city. I don't know if it's exactly Little Rock, but it's somewhere in Arkansas. So that basically changed his entire life. He was somebody who was going to be in a lot of legal trouble. Instead, it got flipped around. And he got a big lawsuit, and now he's kind of on the straight and narrow, if you will. And not to say he was doing anything illegal or bad before, but this the fact that he has so much momentum now that he wants to actually try to run for mayor and possibly create some type of positive change in his community. I definitely look at that as one of our shining examples, but that's just one of many. We've done a bunch of exclusive stories over the years, shining light on people's experience with police violence, police brutality, police even misconduct, sexual misconduct by police. People reach out to us pretty frequently, and we try to cover those stories. So now, of course, our police accountability Facebook page, Police the Police, is throttled into oblivion. So, not too many people actually get to see those stories anymore, even the people who asked for them. But we all know how that game goes.
Right. And with the police side of things, was that something that you had any personal bad experiences with too that inspired that work? What was your history like with that?
Yeah, I always love this question because no, I haven't had any bad experiences with police. Nothing major anyway. Nothing. No bad arrests, no illegal activity on their behalf or anything. I literally got started in this because I saw police throwing around protesters, being heavy-handed with people, even old ladies. I don't know how much you remember the Occupy Wall Street, but they were brutal with the protesters. And of course, it was all over the country, right? It wasn't just in New York. And I realized at that point, I was like, wait a second, like I've always been told the police were here to protect us, to work for us. They're our servants, but here they are, like brutalizing people who are, aren't doing anything wrong, literally practicing, upholding their First Amendment rights. So that's when it clicked in my head. Like, I got to do something. I got to get involved. I don't care what it is. I don't know how it is, but somehow I'm going to get involved. And I like to think that since that day, I have had an impact, and maybe not on a national level or something, but I'd like to say that, our work with Police the Police has been influential to really exposing law enforcement's true colors.
Has your work with promoting that type of thing, has it ever involved, police or a prosecutor or anything like that reaching out to you because you had covered some stuff or you had gotten some type of information like videos and things like that where someone sends you something?
Yeah. I'm currently friends with former Leos, with current Leos. And I think what you're asking is, yeah, we have had law enforcement officers over the years like send us cease and desist letters and stuff, like, which is funny, because some of this stuff that we cover isn't too far away from what the same things that local or mainstream news will be covering. So I doubt that they're sending, the same cease and desist letters out to these outlets, but I guess it's possible. As far as any legal action or anything, now we've never been threatened besides the cease and desist letters. So that was pretty exciting, though. I mean, we were all high-fiving and cheering when that happened, and laughed. Of course, we laughed a lot.
That's awesome. So in your work there, you said, some former law enforcement officers have, become friendly with you and things like that. Does that mean that you've changed the minds of those people and they've reached out to you because of your work and if wanted to be like, yeah, this needs to change? Yeah.
Yeah. There's a current Leo in Florida who's a whistleblower of her own right. We did a podcast with her, Officer Jody, and she's working on a number of different issues, and she's gotten held up on multiple fronts, even by the FBI. She's been denied by the FBI trying to report a case. And then another one is an activist in his own right. He was actually part of the LAPD during the riots, during the 92 riots, the Rampart division, which was one of the worst. And he has dealt with a lot of PTSD, psychological issues since then. And since he quit being a Leo, a law enforcement officer, he's become an activist and a protester. And that's actually where I met him, at a protest. And since then, he's been a great resource. In fact, I just hooked him up with Chris Coffer, who is the director and producer of the Monopoly on Violence. He has a new documentary coming out about police brutality, police accountability, and everything. And the trailer just popped up maybe about 2 weeks ago on YouTube. And he used Alex Salazar. Alex Salazar is the gentleman I'm referring to. He actually used him as the opener in the trailer. So yeah, he's very knowledgeable, and man, some of the stories that guy could share with you will blow your mind. I mean, and the fact that he's had to deal with his PTSD basically on his own in so many different ways, some of it being negative and just completely destructive, but he's kind of taken the reins in and realized his behavior since then, since quitting and really struggling with his PTSD, and has learned how to resolve it on his own right. So, but yeah, man, it's crazy how much police culture really affects these people, and especially any of them that have any semblance of a moral code or moral North Star, So it's been interesting interacting with Leos over the years and getting to hear their side of the story. And you wouldn't believe it, but a lot of them do actually support liberty, and they don't really like the fact that police have gotten such a bad reputation in America over the years.
So when it comes to changing minds and moving the ball forward, what types of outreaches or things like that do you think have been effective at changing the minds of law enforcement officers? Are there any programs or projects or anything like that you've seen that have really pushed that forward?
Maybe LEAP, Law Enforcement Against Prohibition. That would probably be one of the best organizations that I could really point to. As far as I can't really speak on any others because there's really not many doing the work. Unfortunately, it feels like a lot of organizations are probably more catering to like the thin blue line, trying to kind of cater towards police culture. And I don't think there's enough of them really speaking the truth, talking about the fact that it's monopoly, talking about the legal claim to the initiation of violence and these types of things. So just like in society, that conversation is basically non-existent, right? I mean, we talk and we hear all about, police reform, police being racist, but we rarely ever hear about police being decentralized in society. So I can't really say that there's too many organizations that are really speaking about that topic, except for us. Um, Although what I did point to, Leap, yeah, that's probably one of the best ones, because I mean, I think it's not hard to recognize that the drug war has failed, right? It's been 50 years of failure. Now, some people would say it's not a failure. Actually, it's doing exactly what it's supposed to do. And there's an argument to be made for that. Absolutely. It's consolidated power, control, funding, for law enforcement, for the state. But if you look at it from a point of view of like, okay, how much has it actually stopped drug use in this country? It hasn't, it hasn't. We see the opioid crisis in full effect, in full swing right now. And unfortunately, it's the legalized drugs that are the ones that are taking over and really causing havoc and destruction in people's lives, not so much the illegal ones. Now, don't get me wrong, the illegal ones have been detrimental to people's lives, but I would argue that the legalized ones, the big pharma prescriptions, are the ones that are probably more of an issue there. So I think that law enforcement officers have recognized that prohibition is an abject failure. And, we could also just point back to prohibition of alcohol. I mean, how much more evidence do you really need?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's certainly not been a very popular topic for prohibitionists. So over the
Sure.
years, more and more states continue to legalize or decriminalize at least marijuana, and then we're already starting to see other things come to a head with psychedelics. So they're certainly losing that lobbying part of the culture war. Absolutely.
Yep.
So in terms of this the culture war that we're seeing right now, in terms of, I guess you could say, the people who are in the mainstream media colluding with the government, how has that affected you, especially going years back at the peak of your success, before the government really started clamping down on these things? How did that actually end up affecting you?
That's a good question. I don't know if I could quite place my finger on that. I mean, I would say maybe the stringent, continual policies maybe written by these big tech social media companies, which I guess have been becoming more and more, quote, inclusive, but they're becoming more and more landmines for people like ourselves, who talk about these issues. But unfortunately, algorithms can't necessarily distinguish what's jest or what's sarcasm, and they can't distinguish nuance. So for instance, I posted a meme about maybe 2017 or so, and it was a meme of the movie E.T., right? The little boy in the movie, Elliot, is laying next to E.T. on these hospital beds. It's at the end of the movie, E.T.'s dying or whatever. The meme said something along the lines of like, this is what like an illegal alien, I can't remember even exactly what it was, but it had the words illegal alien in it. That was enough for Facebook algorithms to actually get triggered, flag the post, and I got a 30-day ban for something that was a joke. It was something that was a lighthearted joke. It didn't have any malice behind it. It wasn't intended to be hurtful or mean-spirited. It was a joke, and I think most people can interpret it as a joke. And that's the problem with these, quote, fact checkers and these algorithms. Just recently, we had another fact checker from checkyourfact.org who fact checked us on a satirical Biden quote. It was basically this the saying, give a man a fish, that saying or whatever. It was all jumbled up, and I saw it on a shirt. I shared the picture of the shirt. And of course, these fact checkers, that was enough to trigger the fact checkers into saying, well, that's actually false information. Our post got a strike. and now our reach has declined because of it. So it's just an ongoing battle with these people. And I tried to email them, I tried to reach out, I tried to have like a cordial, rational conversation with them, like, hey man, like obviously this is a joke, like you're really not helping anybody out by fact checking satire, and people aren't going to take you seriously. And his response was, well, that's fine. It was a unfactual quote, and our review, our rating stands. So it's continuously, it feels like it's getting pushed more and more in this direction where logic doesn't matter anymore. Logic could be thrown, upside down on its head. They're taking satire and humor and fact checking it. So I don't know if I have a specific answer for that question, Jack, but I would say that things are moving more and more towards that political correctness and just being ultra sensitive, so sensitive that, I mean, they're programming algorithms to fact check, humor and satire. I mean, it's just, to me, it's a little insane.
Yeah, I mean, from our end too, we've noticed that the checks and stuff like that largely appear to just be, and I mean this in the literal sense, the Democrat Party talking points. It's not really about the factuality of the information, or that they're even keeping things up to date with what they talk about. They'll just, if it's anything tangential, they'll find some fact check article to try to slap on anything that they think is some political post that they can put in what is the Democrat talking point below it. And we've found that for like stuff that we've posted where whatever was being checked, we look at the article like, wait, this is a 5-year-old article. This doesn't even apply to what the post is about. We're like, what is this? Right. So that they're not even, caring to have any specificity to what you're posting. They're just like, you know what? We could just put in a talking point here. If they're going to say this, we're going to,
Yeah. I just got a blur cover over a post that could be, construed as harmful for a 2017 post that I made on my Free Thought Project page that doesn't even exist anymore. So, I mean, yeah, it's just absolutely insane. And it seems like Facebook is so big, or Meta now, that, the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing half the time. And so there's like this crazy, these issues, that surface. And of course, users like ourselves always have to deal with them. And I think we talked about this on our podcast when we had you on a couple of weeks ago, but you're absolutely right about these fact checks. And now they've gotten so lazy, and I don't know if it's laziness or incompetence, but they've gotten so lazy that now, even if it's not the same information that you're sharing, they'll slap a fact check on if it's even somewhat overlapping with a fact check that they've done up to like a couple years ago. It doesn't really matter. So, I mean, it's just gotten absurd at this point. I really, truly pray that people know, and I'm talking about outside of Liberty circles, but people know that these fact checks are a joke, that you can't take them seriously, that they're all funded by, the establishment, by some of them even by big pharma. So, it's absolutely critical that we just do everything we can to poke holes in these quote fact checks and really try to, call out these fact checkers whenever we get a chance, and really dethrone their legitimacy and credibility.
So speaking of these changes and what's happening in social media, what's your take now that it's pretty much all set and done on Elon Musk's position with Twitter, and what do you think we have in store coming up with those changes?
That's a great question, dude. In fact, just this morning we had covered, or I think we aggregated it from Mint Press News, but Twitter, as of recently, has gone on a hiring spree of ex-feds, some FBI, and there's like a sizable number of them. So I kind of felt like that was strange, especially with Elon coming in. I don't have time to read you the entire article right now, but that seems suspicious. That seems kind of strange to me. Now, I'm kind of middle of the road on Elon. I know a lot of people are like, yeah, like he's going to be the hero we need for free speech. And then of course there's our conspiracy theorist friends who tell us that, he's a plant, that he's an inside job or COINTELPRO of some sort. And of course, he also says he's big on free speech, but then we see Twitter employees that have been critical of him being fired. And of course, it's hard to distinguish exactly if that was before or after he took the reins. So I don't know. I don't really have a solid position on Elon. I mean, I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that he's going to be better than Zuckerberg and all these other clowns. I mean, I think that's safe to say he probably will be. But I don't know. I don't know if we should hold him up to be the hero, because anytime you idolize any individual like that, except for Ron Paul, of course, it's going to be problematic. So, and of course, the left's going to be able to poke holes in that. So I think what we should do is focus on the good things that he presents. If he does make some significant changes, they're advantageous to the community, then let's focus on that. But I don't know if we should necessarily worship the individual. Although, he has made some good points. Sometimes he'll throw out a libertarian tweet, but then sometimes he'll throw out crazy tweets like we need a climate tax, So it's really hard to get like a good placement on where Elon stands. He's better than most of these corporate hacks, though. I guess that's safe to say.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, there was just a Project Veritas video recently, there's an all hands meeting, and he was talking about, his position with Twitter and what he wanted to have speech wise, just trying to say, he wants more free speech when the, bounds of the law, whatever that can be manipulated to be. But it was really funny because one of the people in the all hands asked him, "Oh, what's your political views?" And he's like, "I consider myself a moderate." It's really interesting how everything's so politicized, even internally there, that it makes you wonder what will ultimately happen in terms of potentially the pushback. Because to me, there's always that opportunity that, when someone gets a lot of pushback from people who, otherwise we wouldn't agree with in terms of their censorship and their views, it could have a positive outcome potentially, right? If he racks them, be like, okay, yeah, these are not the people I want here, it could have, a positive potential. But as you said, that there's some odd thing going on with FBI agents being hired that certainly makes it kind of interesting, like what's going on there, so.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, you go ahead. You guessed.
He's a tough cookie to crack, man. And, I think it's easy to jump on one side, but I feel like there's too much nuance. And just from what we know about Elon and just what he's given us through tweets and his positions on things. So, yeah, I'm not changing my position anytime soon. I mean, I really will need some definite proof, definitive proof that he is on Team Liberty before I start waving the flag and cheering for Elon.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I don't see him as being technically on Team Liberty. I mean, he posted about, if you want, AR-15 and stuff like that, you need to have like special permission from the government and extra vetting. And he's posted many times things mirroring the World Economic Forum stuff. So, I take the little psychological wins. Like I'm of course happy to see him push back when he does, but as you know, it's I'd be very surprised that he has any, meaningfully held principles that will be consistently applied.
It's always so surprising to me that these people don't too. It's like we're just a couple dudes on the internet, and it's like we're more philosophically consistent than like billionaires that have, and that's just because they're successful in the market, entrepreneurs and whatnot, doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be like critical thinkers. But it is surprising and a little disappointing, and we see somebody like Mike Tyson reading Thomas Sowell, and it's like, oh, okay, well, at least Mike Tyson's jumping on board. And I guess there's been a few other celebrities too, Rob Schneider, who have like, no, he's definitely Team Liberty, like he's team like Mises and, Austrian economics and whatnot. But yeah, the billionaires though, they are always regarded as being these brilliant, intellectuals. And it's like, oh, but they don't even know, the basics of the non-aggression principle or something like that. So,
yeah, I mean, they're typically a brilliant, in terms of just like IQ and stuff like that. It's just their specialization is thinking about how to, structure things in a way that they can financially benefit themselves. And for many of those people, that typically does involve a lot of government deals, because in order to have big business and to grow on a global scale, especially, you're going to get a little dirty at some points, whether, it's like, getting tax breaks or working a lobby to get stuff. And again, it's not always fair in that sense. In some cases, some of these people are having the government guns pointed at them and saying like, oh, okay, well, if you don't comply, we're going to shut you down kind of thing. But, there's obviously positive lobbying, like not positive as in it's a good thing, positive as in they're proactively looking to, get government favoritism. And, it just is the nature of that, and trying to grow a business where you have to deal with so many different governmental entities to move forward. So that's the tough part, is that it's very hard to to stay, principled, even if you were originally in some ways, more free market oriented. It can be very hard for some of those people to stay consistent while growing. So
Jeff Dice made a great point too. I was watching him recently on a podcast, and he said, like, if they're going to be handing out money, like, I'd rather have them hand out money to Elon Musk than like maybe some of these other entities or actors, within the market who maybe don't have the same values that Musk does. And again, we don't know like exactly what those are, but he occasionally surfaces with some good thinking. And yeah, I almost forgot to mention that whole fact too, that Elon's taken a lot of subsidies from the government over the years. I'm sure somebody who's watching this was like, oh, he forgot. But you're right, I did temporarily forget. And that's another reason why, it's just hard to really put him in our camp and be able to logically justify it.
Yeah, no, yeah. I mean, and with him, it's very clear, at least to me, that his MO, at least from his language over the years, is that he seems to be really interested in having ultimate knowledge. That's why he wants to do Neuralink and try to connect people. And I can understand that, in the sense of like wanting to know as much as possible. But there's also the flip side of like, how is that being used for control?
Sure.
How is he using that, to corner the market, whether it's through, state cronyism or, direct manipulation and ways like that. And for me, Twitter, it could be another one of those things where it's just, he wants to aggregate control of a platform where he has a big voice already, and he can help seed in with others what his agenda is. Because if he obviously controls Twitter and has that ability to secure his position for outreach, it certainly is a powerful way to get your message out and to keep people focused on what it is you're doing. And I mean, this is not something that's weird, right? With Trump, that was very obvious, right? How you could use Twitter to keep people focused on you. It's not that crazy of an idea. So,
and there's been talk of Musk running in 2024, although I don't feel like he has that desire. I feel like he's too embedded into the market and all his different projects. I mean, God, he's like probably one of the busiest humans in the existence of the world too, with all the things that he does, and I know most of the time he's like sleeping in the office and stuff like that. Regarding the Neuralink, that's another thing that our conspiracy theorist friends like regard as this huge like transhumanist agenda. And look, I'm not here to say that's not the case because I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know for sure, and of course, they always pump these things up and present them to us in the most positive light that they can. But from what I've heard from the man himself, from interviews of Elon Musk and all the research and information that currently is done about Neuralink, he's at least for right now focusing on paraplegics, people who have spinal cord injuries and stuff like that. And I think if this is something that is successful and actually functions and works how it's supposed to, that's one hell of a gift that he gave to humanity, to be able to give those people functioning limbs again, or the ability to walk, any of these things. So in that sense, it's like we can't always just be so doom and gloom. We can't always just point to like the most nefarious, like ominous type of scenario possible. Like I get it. We can't keep that. We can't say that's completely out of the equation, but we can't just automatically jump to that as well, just because he's somebody who has a lot of money. So yeah, I don't know. That's my 2 cents on Neuralink.
Well, yeah, I mean, for me too, I'm not all or nothing when it comes to technology. I'm a very pro technology person. So
same.
I love technology. I love advancements. I love internet. I love, all this stuff. And I know there's some people who are in the liberty section who are like, I don't like technology. They just get so worked up about the dangers of technology. And I'm like, yeah, it's also dangerous, not having clean water and shelter and, the ability to communicate with people and solve for health issues. I'm like, so it's just that, as with anything that is in this benign realm, it can be used for good and it can also be used for some evil stuff. So the question is how do we make sure to get people to think about how to avoid the evil stuff and focus on how technology can be used for good, of course, from the voluntarist perspective. So, that's to me is pretty important at the end of the day. So when it comes to what you see on the horizon, being in the thick of all the censorship and watching the changes, stuff like that, where have you found your seeds most successfully sown as you've adapted to this environment and have tried to get your message out there despite all this?
It sucks to say it, man, and I really, really, really wish this wasn't the case. But the big tech, mainstream social media platforms is still kind of the place where there's a group of people hungry for this type of information. And I hate to say it. I mean, I know we had talked about this, but the Free Thought Project is literally on every alt social media platform you could think of. We're on MeWe, we're on Minds, we're on Float, we're on Telegram, we're on Gab, we're on Mastodon. I mean, you name it, we're on there. And I really wish that the Liberty community, I was just thinking about this morning, I really wish the Liberty community could migrate to one of these platforms and really just make it our new home. It feels very hypocritical when I see people like Larkin Rose every day using and posting on Facebook. And now, don't get me wrong, I get it. I understand why we stay on Facebook. We're still on Facebook. I'm still on Facebook. The Free Thought Project and Police the Police is still on Facebook. It's a double-edged sword for sure. But it is discouraging and a bit disappointing that we haven't been able to shift our momentum over to one of these other platforms. And, we're constantly talking about abandoning the state, moving on from the state, evolving outside of the grasp of government. But we can't even evolve outside of the grasp of big tech, and that's not something that's been like a cohesive collective effort within our community. So unfortunately, we're still on these big tech platforms. Now, on the flip side, there's still a lot of reach there, especially Instagram. Instagram has cracked down on censorship with their algorithms, with their AI, but it's not as bad as Facebook. But even still, if you're able to walk on those eggshells and tiptoe, really dodging and avoiding those landmines that they have set everywhere, you could actually get some really good reach on Facebook. And I've seen pages that have never posted, that are liberty-oriented pages that have never posted about COVID, and they're blowing up. They're doing very, very well. All of their posts have thousands of likes, hundreds of comments. So I'm trying to do my best to kind of do that as well on these big tech platforms. We've created new pages recently for Police the Police, for the Free Thought Project. And that's what those pages are going to be for, just kind of tiptoeing along the line. But I do still really hope and wish that we can move over to a Minds or something like that. That's going to be the best place for us, because even right now, we don't know what they're censoring, what they're not. You go into a post, you can't see some of the comments because Facebook has already taken them down, because Facebook's already hidden them from you. So it skews the conversation. We could be better about that. I think we could be more mindful about that. So yeah, unfortunately, it's kind of, I feel guilty admitting it, but I'm still on Instagram, seeing a lot of success for my own personal work, Jason.e.Bassler. On Instagram, I almost have 20,000 followers on there over the past 6 months. So there's a lot of momentum. And like I said, there's a lot of people hungry for this information. It's just, they don't know about these other smaller platforms. And in a way, if our job is planting seeds to try to wake people up, win over hearts and minds, then these big tech platforms are kind of the place to be anyway.
Yeah, I agree. Like I always say to everybody, I'm going to be on both. Like I have presences on the alternative and on the regular, because my goal is outreach. If I was just on the alternative, then I'd be missing all the people that I could be reaching on the mainstream ones. But if I don't make those backups, well, then I might be screwing myself, because if those go down, I need that place where I at least have something built up already, can reach people, can tell people where new things are going. So to me, that's why I tell people, I say, make your backups, steward there, here and there, keep your presences otherwise on the platforms you like. Just understand that it's not secure and safe and that you can't trust it. But if you steward on both, and keep it up, well, you'll be fine, because it doesn't matter at the end of the day. If they take down, one thing, okay, well, you got a backup and you can let us know, oh, hey, they took me down, I'm this new thing, right? So that, that's why I try to tell people and to not, feel ashamed about that. Because there's nothing shameful about doing what you can to try to reach people and to subvert, what is otherwise them trying to, cloud the conversation or hide things. So, no one should be ashamed, of trying to do multi-tiered outreach and trying to do what they can to get around it. I think the only thing that anyone should be ashamed of is if they actually, don't talk about the principles at all, or just stop talking about liberty whatsoever. Well, yeah, then you've been silenced. Okay.
Right.
Like there's a big difference between okay, I'm going to get the message out and get people to hear it by changing how I phrase it. As compared to, I'm not going to talk about it anymore because I'll just, post my cat picture and be silent. Like, no, well, yeah, that would be a problem. You know what I mean? Like, just think about ways to subvert, think about ways to get around it, play the game, but still reach people, connect people, show people the alternatives, intellectually and technologically.
Absolutely. And it's easier than you would think. It almost sounds daunting or overwhelming. I mean, I literally have one browser up that has every tab for the Free Thought Project, every social media, and it's just boom, 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 boom. You go down the line, you post one right after another. It's really not difficult. They even have some apps that do that for you, that you could just post it once, it'll send it out to all of them. So yeah, I couldn't agree more. I wasn't trying to necessarily shame anybody for staying on Facebook. I am disappointed though, and I'm not saying that you were making that claim, but I just kind of want to distinguish that I am disappointed that we haven't had more of a momentum, more of a groundswell just to push over to some of these platforms. And we actually tried. The Free Thought Project, myself and Derek Bros in 2019 actually put on an alt media summit in Houston, where we had 50 different journalists, influencers, organizations, page owners, basically anybody with a large audience come. And the conclusion of that, after a whole day of putting our heads together, was basically, we need to get everybody on Minds. And that was like the big idea that we came up with. And unfortunately, it never manifested. It never came to fruition. So, but I think I've kind of explained both sides of it. So at the same time, there's nothing really to feel guilty about, especially if you are trying to wake people up with this type of outreach.
Well, I would say that with Minds, I don't know if I'd say it wasn't ultimately successful, because in my view, Minds has actually been the most technologically successful in terms of having a working app that you can download, their website being very user friendly, the tokens working, boosts working, stuff like that. Yeah, they've gone through some bugs in here and there, but they are a very well developed site. And in fact, so much so, and they're so well networked, they're even having a conference up in New York City coming up, where they're having big names come and talk under the banner of Minds, and getting people there, including people I think like a Zuby, I think Tim Pool, I think James O'Keefe, yeah, and some people too on the left side of things. It's actually pretty impressive. I would say Minds has actually been probably the most successful broad-based support social media platform that's an alternative, and I use it regularly. I definitely love it. Have lots of engagement there relative to some people. I mean, again, I'm not just a single person who's like just doing friends or something like that. I have like media and projects and other stuff like that. But
sure,
I think Minds to me is probably the most promising and clearly has the most broad-based support. It's not just like, oh, this is just Trump's platform or something like that.
Right.
It's yeah. So to me, I and I've been monitoring them all. I've seen everything from Parler, Gab, Sovereign, and stuff like that, and none of them really hold up for at least utility and monetization and the ability to promote things like Minds does. Mine just really, I mean, they killed it. I think they really did a good job, compared to most others. I think personally, they're going to probably last the most. And then, Float obviously is trying to get there. I think they're, maybe a couple of years behind reaching where Minds is now, but it'd be great if they were able to do that too and have maybe a true competitor to Twitter or something like that. But yeah. I think you guys are right about the Minds thing back then. I was in the loop on that, email chain too. And I thought, Minds seems like it's probably going to win.
Yeah, and just to clarify, I didn't necessarily mean like the user interface, user experience, functionality, all those things. I agree. Minds, for the most part, is pretty flawless. I meant just more if we failed trying to get everybody to migrate over, because the idea was like, okay, we all have these large audiences. Let's try to get all of our audience to shift over. Let's try to get the influencers, the big names. Let's try to get them over as well. Now, that has happened to a certain degree, but I would say I could log on to Facebook and see, a number of different Liberty All-Stars that have still no presence on Minds. But I agree. I like Minds as well. In fact, that's probably the biggest one that I push whenever I do interviews. Of course, I love Float as well. They just recently had me out to speak at their festival in late April, which was awesome. Good people over there. And like Minds, I don't think we ever really have to worry about censorship, just because I understand and know the people who are running these sites. And of course, that's not to say that, they're not going to somehow get bought out someday and their policies might change. That's certainly possible. But Bill Ottman and Aaron and Kingsley are solid people. They very much in our camp when it comes to upholding liberty, free speech, and stuff like that. And yeah, you're right. These other social media platforms tend to be echo chambers. I feel like Minds kind of gives us more of that opportunity for maybe a middle ground, not necessarily left, not necessarily right. And yeah, you earn tokens from making posts. I mean, that's pretty sweet. Of course, the Minds token has dropped quite a bit during this crypto carnage, but just the fact that you can make money for posting. And there's also the Minds Plus feature. One last thing, and I'll shut up because I'm talking a lot here, but they also have that that jury, what's it called?
The jury pools for saying what the
Yes.
content is inappropriate for the platform based on the rules, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
Which
brilliant.
is a brilliant idea. And I don't understand why maybe other social media platforms aren't implementing this as well. But yeah, it's just a jury. I don't know if it's necessarily of your peers, but it's just other users who rate the content. Let's say if there's supposed to be nudity or something, if they wish to indulge, click on it. If there's no nudity, well, that was just an algorithm error or whatever. They click no violation. And that way it seems so much more advantageous for the users rather than algorithms arbitrarily flagging certain content and then hoping and praying that maybe within the next 2 weeks, a real life human will review it who has half of a brain, because as we know, a lot of these content reviewers for Facebook, they're just literally drones, like they don't have much critical thought of their own. So, but yeah, Minds is a great platform. Minds float. I even like MeWe for a little bit, but I don't really see much innovation over there. I don't see a ton of growth. I see a lot of momentum. We're able to gather 22,000 fans on MeWe, which is more than we have on any other platform besides Facebook and Instagram. So in that sense, there are users over there, but they tend to lean a little bit more right. It is a little bit more of a right-wing echo chamber, kind of like a Gab or something like that. But Minds, yeah, Bill Ottman.
And on top of that, do you have a presence too on the the Odyssey library platform?
We are on Odyssey. The Free Thought Project is. I don't think we've posted too much, but we have a few video uploads for sure.
Right, and those are examples of another alternative, right, to the video content, because library is the back end and Odyssey is kind of the thing that like helps organize it. So you can see it in a beautiful layout. But that's another example. These are Liberty-owned businesses, and they're relatively, I would say, successful. I think they're, to me, winning out over potentially like BitChute and Rumble and stuff like that, because they have the tokenization, part where you can like earn stuff for it. They have really good, user interface. You have the ability to directly share from YouTube, so you can connect your YouTube account, so you can, mirror, and then that's one, less thing you have to do, which is pretty cool, right? Saving time, especially. I mean, I would think it'd be great if some of these platforms too could do what you were talking about with the tabs, but just be able to be like, oh, okay, you can share this automatically across these platforms and increase, your engagement. So, we'll see. I mean, there's Hootsuite, but maybe one day there's going to be something that will be, that for the alt media platforms too.
Right. And that was kind of the one blessing with all this censorship and big tech overreach, is that there are new market alternatives popping up, and just like anything else in the market, right? I mean, that's the beauty of the market in general. But so yeah, we have to support them. And that's kind of what I was saying the disappointment stems from too, is we should be supporting Minds, we should be supporting Odyssey, we should be supporting anybody who really isn't trying to impede on our free speech. And of course, there's that whole argument, well, they're private companies and it's not free speech. Well, they also collude with government. All big tech companies are colluding, they're taking subsidies. They have back end moderators who work with the state. I mean, there's so many different examples. So they're not purely private entities, and I don't think we should be treating them as such.
So with that in mind, where can people find you and support you going forward to help you keep flourishing and growing on these many different platforms, wherever it is? Where's the best place to find you?
Thanks, brother. So my work specifically right now, Jason Bassler, you could find me again on Instagram. That's probably my biggest right now, jason.e.bassler. I put out a daily tweet on there, a bunch of different stories every day with the most latest and viral memes. And I've been doing more videos, putting myself in front of the camera, which I'm not a huge fan of, but got to do it. And Twitter, definitely find me on Twitter, Jason Bassler 1. And otherwise, the Free Thought Project is spread far and wide. We're on all these different, I mean, we just talked about half of them, but MeWe, Minds, Twitter, Gab, Getter, I mean, all of them. We're just trying to keep up with all of them, trying to have a huge presence across the internet. spectrum. And like you had mentioned, yeah, we were those people who were victim of putting their eggs in one basket, and we learned a lot. In 2018, we lost nearly 6 million fans when Facebook and Twitter both took us down on the same day. So I'd very much suggest anybody out there listening to this, do not just stay on one platform and think you're safe, especially if your livelihood depends on it. Start branching out, start small, you'll eventually grow. But that's the name of the game these days. Otherwise, go to www.thefreethoughtproject.com. At the top there, you'll see tabs for our podcast. We've had a bunch of great guests over the years, including Jack, which was just 2 weeks ago, which one of my favorite, to be honest. And you could support us there as well. You could donate or subscribe. And look, guys, like, we really, really need help from the Liberty community right now. We have a few different various avenues for revenue and income streams, but it's not panning out, and it's a very slow process. If you want us to stay around, if you want alternative media to exist on the internet, we have to pony up. There's this crazy idea that everything on the internet should be free. And I know people do have success doing donating and fundraising, and that's what we're asking. Just a few bucks, maybe even a $5 subscription every month. That would help us out. We've put in the time. We work hard. We've proven ourselves over the years. So we just need that support, financial support from the Liberty community. But yeah, man, that's basically it. And very much thank you for your time today.
Oh, of course. And real quick,
yeah,
is it okay to mention something that people might be able to support you on coming up with?
Sure.
You're working
yeah. Jack and I were talking about this before the show started, but I'm proud to announce that Matt and myself have been working hard on a children's book behind the scenes about teaching kids their rights. So we're about halfway through, maybe a little bit more than halfway through. The whole book's done. We're just trying to get it all finalized now with some of the illustrations and whatnot. So keep an eye out for that. We'll definitely be promoting it. And yeah, pick yourself up a copy for your kid or your brother's kid or the kids in your family. And yeah, help us out, support us.
Definitely. I'll be definitely picking up a book and promoting that. Want to see that get out there. Absolutely. So I'm excited for that. So thank you so much, Jason. I really appreciate you coming on. And for everybody else, I'm not sure exactly when the next Zero State episode will be, but I'll be on Kareem's show later tonight. I'm going to be another show from someone, I don't know, in Ireland or something like that later tonight. So you'll see some announcements of that later. And then next week, Fun and I will be on with a censorship channel. I forgot the exact name of the something uncensored something on Minds. I just forgot the exact name. It's not mine, but we'll be there doing that on Wednesday. And then Thursday, we have a final stream for the voluntarists. So lots of ways to connect and keep up, and make sure to check out the Free Thought Project and support Jason's work. So take care, everybody. Talk to you soon. And yeah, we got more good things coming.
Zero State.